discussing is something that relates to us. Yes, the safety and the protection of journalists in Nigeria. So safety is an increasingly important subject in the journalism profession. And in Nigeria, journalists have at different times suffered multiple forms of safety breaches, you know, some killed, many injured, or even harassed multiple times. You know, we've had incidences of cameras being smashed, you know, journalists being manhandled and all of that. But we actually have, so there's no doubt that we have some constitutional provisions for the safety of journalists. And there are 3 provisions in the 1999 Constitution as amended that relate to the safety of workers and journalists. And then we have 2 under Chapter 2, Fundamental Objectives and Directive Principles of State Policy, while the 3rd is in Chapter 4, Fundamental Rights. And then 1 is a general provision in Section 17, subsection 3 of all workers. And let me just quickly read this. Section 17 says, it states that the state shall direct its policy towards ensuring that the health, safety, and welfare of all persons in employment are safeguarded and not endangered or abused. And then the other 2 relate directly to the media in Section 22 on the obligations of the mass media, which states that the press, radio, television, and other agencies of the mass media shall at all times be free to uphold the fundamental objectives in this chapter and uphold the responsibility and accountability of the government to the people. And I think we still have subsection 39 and all of that. So now we have provisions, we have, you know, covering journalists, but how effective are these provisions so far, especially to you, Mr. Sunday, as a journalist?
Well,
okay.
That's another complicated issue.
Okay.
So how effective are those provisions,
Okay.
you know, covering journalists? It's the same thing as asking of how compliant are state actors in Nigeria to the Constitution. The government comply to the laws guiding their own existence. You know, these are questions. You know, do they really place their activities, in juxtaposition with what the law provides? Okay, from the executive to the legislature to the judiciary. And by the time you juxtapose their activities in terms of, what the law says, I'm sure that you will know what the right answer would be. But having said that, I think it's more important to say this. Is this in this part of the world I will see this kind of abuse, arbitrary use of powers, unlimited, use of power by state actors. You just do things with impunity, and you feel you don't care because you also have the instrument of coercion to back your actions, and so you can just take on anybody, including the media. And don't forget, the media is the fourth arm of the estate. The fourth in the estate in terms of administration of the society. By the time you take the executive, you take the legislature, you take the judiciary, the next is the media, before other social forces will come in. So the media is supposed to exist parallel with the government and exist as partners in collaboration to make the society better for the citizens who are out of the system, especially the non-state actors. And that is what it should be. But I think occasionally the reverse is the case. We see antagonism and all kinds of reckless use of powers and all that. So it's quite unfortunate.
Okay. So let's, Mr. Achike, I think this question will be for you, speaking on the safety of journalists in Nigeria. How well would you say the Constitution covering Nigerian journalists, how effective would you say it has been so far?
Yeah, I think my colleague here in the studio answered you. It's not about the effectiveness of the Constitution or effectiveness of the law. I think what is critical is that there are provisions, constitutional lawful provisions for the protection of these categories of Nigerians, of citizens. And so when laws are there, it is for the operators of the law to ensure compliance. That's what this whole thing is all about. And of course, the role of the media, that's why the media is the only other social force, is the only social force that is giving, explicit mention in the Constitution, because the Constitution recognizes the overwhelming importance of the media, of the media in ensuring good governance, in ensuring the rule of law, in ensuring that those who are in power comply with the provisions of the Constitution. So they are there as a safeguard for the betterment of society, for the growth of democracy, and so in fact, there is a saying that if you want to know the level of freeness or freedom that a society enjoys, look at the media. That it is the level of freedom that the media in the particular country enjoys. That is what will give you an indication, the level or the degree of freeness in that country. That will give you an idea of the progress, of the democratic progress that has been made in that country. And so it is key. But what we have seen over the years is that the practice of journalism is being more and more endangered, by state actors. In fact, we're in the worst situation that we were, perhaps maybe to some extent, one would say under the military dictatorship. And that sounds very strange. Of course, when you are talking about Decree 4 and all that, promulgated under the military, and that were targeted at journalists. But you have a situation where, for instance, now, I can talk about the liberalization or democratization of, suppression, of journalists in the country. Attack on journalists has increased over the years from 1999 to date. Before, usually the arm of government that will tend to have problem with the media is usually the executive at the federal level. Then they will now use, federal resources and federal personnel, like the DSS, the police, and other security agencies to harass the media. But what we are seeing is that the governors have gotten in on the act. So you cannot even write anything that is contrary to, that is perceived to be anti-governor of a state. And then the state will clamp down on you. We saw what happened under the last administration of Umahi in Enugu State, where several journalists, were incarcerated unjustly. We saw the problem with Abba Jalingo, I think in Cross River State, incarcerated again for writing and then being charged for treason, which is laughable anyway, for writing against the government of the day. We have also seen the problem by Zik Jafar in Kano suffered because he reported the corruption case against Ganduje, and at the time his life was at risk. So the journalists have suffered a lot of intimidation in the past few years, even on the democratic setting. The recent one that created a lot of uproar, if we remember, is the arrest of a journalist by the military. Recently, he was kept, incommunicado for about 2 weeks before, noise began to be made from all quarters, and then the military had to release him. So the protection of journalists really is not what it used to be before, and that has a way of making them unnecessary, putting them unnecessary on their toes, and not allowing them to freely express themselves out of fear that the authorities will clamp down on them.
Looking at the last general elections, so many journalists were harassed, some even sustained injuries and just diverse things happening to journalists, and they were not protected. They were not protected. Well, again, we saw that recently the Federal High Court issued a directive to the federal government of Nigeria to investigate, prosecute, and publish perpetrators of all attacks against journalists and media practitioners, and ensure that all victims of attacks against journalists have access to adequate remedies. And we saw this was due to the Nigeria Press Freedom Group Media Rights Agenda, who issued or who filed a case against the federal government over, you know, incidences of harassment, murder and the rest on journalists, and nothing was done about it. So now, what do you think what should be the way forward? I mean, looking at how, like you said, we've had a very high rate of journalists being manhandled and being killed, you know, without any prosecution. No one, not even the security agencies, coming out to say, okay, we're on this case. Or even when they come out to say, okay, we're on the case, we're investigating, we end up not having anyone, no one arrested, you know, no one being punished for the act, which kind of makes it look as though the federal government don't really see the importance of journalists in the country as it is.
Look, our politicians, the so-called Democrats are not Democrats. Let us get it right. There's only a pretense, you know, to democratic credentials that they try to display, but they are not democratic. And if you're not democratic, you'll be autocratic. So what they have done is to undermine the democratic institutions in the country, you know, and to personalize state power, you know, and as a result of that, the culture of impunity continues to grow in the country. And that exactly is the problem. So if we are talking about, you know, protection of the media, of journalists and the rest, it's important, it's critical. But unfortunately, even when the courts step in, and that is the essence of having courts there too, so that the court intervention can serve as a wake-up call to the abuse of power by you know, the executive. But you find out that even at that level, court cases, you know, sometimes there's undue interference in the court. And even when there is no interference in the court, there is a deliberate effort by the civilian administrations to frustrate even the rulings of the court and not implement them. Because the courts do not have an implementation organ or agency. So once they have made a ruling, it is left for the executive to abide by the ruling. Even if it is a matter involving the executive and certain individuals, organizations within the society. Once the court has made a ruling, it is final, and the executive has no business not implementing it. But in Nigeria, unfortunately, it is a completely different story. You know, so I guess that this is as a result of the fact that we have not yet attained a reasonable level of democratization process that will make it very difficult, you know, for certain agencies of government, certain state actors to continue to vilify journalists openly and publicly, you know, just because they are not towing their line or they are not in conformity with their desires, you know, or their interests. And so it's a struggle. That's exactly what. So it's a struggle. We must continue to agitate. We must continue, you know, advocacy until to force the politicians to do the needful. That is the only way.
Back to the studio. So, Mr. Sunday, now we as journalists, what should we do because I feel like part of this problem is the fact that at some point it feels like journalists are not really respected. I could be wrong. You know, there's just this casualty when it comes to journalists. And I don't know. I mean, that's why you're here to have this discussion. What do we as journalists need to do to remind the government and even citizens at large that, you know, we are the watchdog of the society and we need to be protected. We need to be safeguarded. We shouldn't be manhandled. So what do we need to do as journalists?
Well, I think what we should do is to see ourselves as journalists,
okay,
as people who have a peculiar job to do, to deliver to the society. Like he's talked about democracy. You know, there's desperation of power in this country, too much desperation of power, that they undermine all democratic principles to access power in Nigeria. And the moment they access that power, okay, they now do everything to retain that power. You get it? And in retaining that power, they are not thinking of how they benefit from that power. So anybody that is coming with any contrary view or opinion is seen as an enemy. And that is what most journalists suffer. You know, I remember in 2003, when Senator Jibril Aminu, they were the Senator retreat in Port Harcourt. He suggested a bill that if you contest for election and you promise Nigerians that these are the things you are going to do, if you get to the office, you don't do them, you should be prosecuted. Right there, the senators rejected it before the inauguration of the Senate. You get it? So the level of respect a government gives to journalists and other social forces is a function of the level of democratic civilization of that man in office. Take it out. I was a younger journalist when Tinubu was governor of Lagos State. Now, in those days, all the telephone numbers of all the commissioners are being made available to journalists. So you could call at any time. There were some commissioners that when you call, they would say, oh, this issue you cannot discuss on phone, can you come to my office? In those days, you could access commissioners at Alausa, just move in and tell them you want to see some commissioner. When you go there today, they will tell you to go and write application. Even to see the CPS, they will ask you if you have written an application. So you see the decline of democratic civilization in the country is sinking. And that is what's affecting other social forces in the country, including journalists. Now, you are saying, what should we do? I think we should be very, very stringent with our functions, with our duties. You don't compromise. You stay focused. And if you want to hit, you hit the bull's eye. You target the bull's eye. Be sure what you are giving out to the public, you have facts. Don't compromise standards. Okay? Unfortunately, but let me say unfortunately, between 40 to 60% of media organizations in Nigeria today are owned by politicians. Television, newspapers. They fund them. They created them. So, we are still going to have a segment that may not be neutral, that may not be objective. But let that minority that will be neutral and be objective, you know, be focused. And make sure you balance issues. Because that is the most important thing. They are afraid. You see, the elite, they are afraid that you expose their secret. Even when they know that what you are saying is true, they will still want to fight you.
Which is why they go after your life.
Yes. They will still want to fight you. Okay? Even when you are saying the truth, you have the fact, they will still want to fight you.
Okay, so bringing me to the next question. What do you think are the effects of this? I mean, Mr. Achike also pointed out the fact that the lives of reporters are in danger. And so definitely, journalists will be scared. You know, there will be that fear of, this story,
intimidation.
Should I? So what do you think are the effects of this, what would I use now to explain it? I'm sure you understand what I'm saying.
The treatment to the journalists.
Yes, the effect of all of that on journalists.
Well, I think it also depends on individual journalists.
Okay.
If you allow yourself to be pushed into cowardice, then you're going to fail. So you won't be able to perform your duties again.
That reminds me, I also want to add on the question I asked, is that probably the reason why we sort of have very few numbers of investigative journalists? We have very few number.
Well, intimidation may not be part of it.
Okay.
Funding may also be part of it.
Okay.
And that is one thing. Then the push to celebrate politicians, you know, just give the public what the politicians are saying is also a factor. So we are not even giving the politician what is, but what the politicians are saying. So investigative journalism is not being given much attention as they're supposed to be. Okay? Much attention. So there are fundamental issues. Okay, let me share this experience. Some years back, you know, I did this to a publication. And because it was a big man, he wrote my office, he went and hired his son, and wrote my office I should pay him 500 million.
Wow.
My publisher should pay him 500 million. You know. And we should go and apologize in 7 newspapers within 7 days.
Wow.
So I looked at the whole thing. And unfortunately for the man, he's an international criminal. But because he dined with the elite, the business tycoon and all that, so he was just having activity with with impunity. And unfortunately for the man, as he was writing my organization, because I also relate with the civil liberties organization, you know, which I later became a member, And all the investigation, it was thorough investigated matter, which also involved the CLO. So I put on everything. He was also writing the CLO that they learned that, he wasn't quoting my name, that the story so person did, that he got the source from them. That the same lawyer, a senior advocate, was start telling them, that he would want to come and have a discussion. We did the publication on a Saturday, and on Monday, we got the letter. So I quietly walked. We had the CLO headquarters at Allen here then. I quietly walked down there. As I was walking there, they were celebrating, and I said, what? They now presented the letter. I now presented, we went into an emergency meeting. I said, okay, if the man is coming, I'm going to head that committee. That would then deliberate. And let the man come and explain himself. And immediately they said, I should not panic. I now got everything done. I went back. I called the EFCC before the initial story was written. They made statement. They told me the day they arrested the man and why the reason they released him the following morning.
Oh, wow.
Because of the constitutional constraints.
Okay.
We had documents, other documents from NAFDAC and all that, because there were so many activities involved. And the guys in Seattle, they said, no, I should go and tell the lawyer to go to court, that I'll start by my story. That they are going to provide me enough lawyers to go and handle that case. And I went back.
And you were not scared for your life?
What should I be scared? I went back, I put it down. I brought the letter, I put down the letter he wrote to me, the letter he wrote to Cielo. These are contradictory issues. They know that those fights were there. And I put down the ESCC comment, because I called the spokesman there. I put everything down. I brought out the documents of the NAFDAC and other agencies. I put them down, so that I told the man to go to court, that I'll stand by my story. And he never went to court. A week after, he went to Cielo to confirm, and they said, yeah, he withdrew his legal service from that man. And that man never came back again. So the point is this, what I'm trying to say. If you know you want to go into that, hold your facts and let them be sacred, don't compromise standards. You always survive it. Even though let them put the whole DSS. DSS, they want us now. It's not how time they want to. No, they need us. They need us to survive.
Help dig out the facts.
The government needs the media to survive. Yes. Government at all levels. They need the media to survive. Without the media, the government cannot exist. Your communication flow, your communication net will be broken on a daily basis. So they need us. But the point is this, let's not compromise the standards. Let's not also compromise the processes. Make sure that what you are putting down is, is in the right direction. And make sure you balance it. Because there's a report somebody brought, and I said, okay, I looked at it, I said, okay, I cannot do this except I get to those guys. They must make an input. Now, if I go there and they refuse to make an input, then it means that they are the one that refuse to make an input. I'll go ahead with that report. So you don't just get a report in the first instance and, you now want to, because you have got this, you push without initial contact. You make the contact. If they don't make input, it's their choice not to make the input. You're going hard with your report. They let them come for you.
Okay.
So I think
okay. So let's have Mr. Achike's last words before we wrap up on the discussion for today.
Yeah. We have talked about the importance of the media. It can never be emphasized, and of course we know that. Like I said, it is one way of determining the level and degree of the democratization process, especially for third world countries. So leaders, political leaders, are supposed to be much more tolerant and also realize that if they keep their hands clean and they do the work that they are meant to do, that the media will be there to help them do their trumpet. And so all hands must be on deck. What the media, the journalists are supposed to do is to ensure that there is greater solidarity among themselves. And just like the man, my colleague in the studio has also talked about, they need to do the job. There are certain ethics surrounding the job, certain standards that they must follow. They must not lower the standards, so that they will be above board. So it is important, absolutely important, that that solidarity prevails, because solidarity means that the media will always, journalists will always stand for themselves, for one another, whenever the space is threatened. And don't forget that the media is one of the most powerful institutions in your country, very, very powerful. So if they act with responsibility and in solidarity, the media is strong enough to bring down any government, especially any wayward government, that is not living up to expectations. They must not be collaborators with the ruling political, class, with the people who are also ruling the country. Because that is one aspect of it also, that there's always that tendency for certain people within the media space to collaborate with those that are, undermining the country, the political elites. They must know that they do not have responsibility to these people, but they have responsibility to the Nigerian nation state.
Exactly.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Achike. We're grateful. Thank you.